ora tātou, I'm Miss Lass from Putaruru College. This film's being brought to you by PC Films. Today we're going to talk about one of the most important aspects of studying independently, which is how to take notes and make better use of the information that we're using. Whilst you guys are working from home, and also for seniors as you're going to be revising at the end of the year, it's really important that we don't just rely on our short-term memory for information. So think about how you're able to retain information for longer by making notes. And I'm going to show you a couple of different things to think about. The reality is that we are bombarded by information all day, every day. If the average person talks 16,000 words a day and you guys are in lessons with different teachers every single day of the week for 40 weeks of the year, it's not really realistic and practical for you to hold on to all of that information without making notes. So it's really important that we develop this skill, but it's not easy. And it is something that you need to practice. So have a think about getting a piece of paper and a pen in front of you now so that you can maximise the advice that I'm sharing with you here. So first up, we're just going to do a little bit of an exercise, and I'm showing you this picture now. Without making any notes at all, no pen, no paper, just relying on your memory, have a look at this image and pause the video and see how much information you can capture just relying on your memory. Chances are that after a minute or so, trying to recall that information is going to be quite difficult. You're going to be able to hold on to some information, but as time goes on, that information is going to fade. It may become inaccurate, and you're not going to be able to hold on to all of it. So we're going to try it again another time, but hopefully you've got a piece of paper and a pen now. So with the next image that I show you, we're actually going to try and make notes and capture even more information. So there's a few different strategies that you might want to think about. You might want to consider writing down things in categories. So with the image that we've got here, you might want to think about, I'm going to write down all the pink items, then all the blue items, then all the yellow items and the grey. You might want to do it by section and think, I'm going to concentrate on the top half of the screen before I even look at the second half of the screen. Perhaps you might want to organise your notes by section or objects. For me, I capture a lot of information just by scribbling down the first couple of letters of each word. Your notes only have to make sense to you. They don't have to be pretty, they don't have to be perfect for anybody else. So again, I'll give you a chance with a pen and a piece of paper to pause the video and see how much you can remember from this image in a minute. Okay, chances are that your list is a lot longer now because you were able to write it down. So immediately you can see the difference between just trying to hold things in your head and the value of writing down notes. But it's what we do with our notes that is really important for studying. A scribbled piece of paper in a workbook isn't much use 3 months down the line when you're preparing for an exam or you're polishing up an assessment or a piece of work for a portfolio. So it's important that you actually do something with the notes that you make. This is my favourite strategy for note-taking. It's called the Cornell Method. It was named after a university in America, Cornell University, and it's a really simple way for you to capture notes on any topic but make really effective use of them as well. Okay, so you just need pen and paper and you divide your page into 3 sections. On the left-hand side over here, you need quite a wide margin, and this is where you're going to write down key words, things that seem really important on your topic. You might also write down questions that you have about the information that you're collecting. At the top of your piece of paper, really important that you write down the title of your topic and where you're capturing your information from, so that if you need to, you can check back on that page of your textbook, on that website, check that YouTube video again, and you know exactly where that information has come from. That's crucial. On the right-hand side where you've got that big space, this is where your messy notes go. So as you're receiving information, you're scribbling down your notes. This might be a collection of dates, names, statistics, important pieces of data. It's also a really good opportunity to scribble down quotations from people that you will want to reference in your work later. This section over on the right-hand side doesn't need to make sense to anyone but you. Okay, it's about collecting and getting as much information on paper as possible. The great part of this method is down there at the bottom. Okay, actually allowing a good 5 or 6 lines at the bottom of your piece of paper where you're going to summarise the information on this topic once the information has settled in your mind. So this isn't something that you can do immediately. Once you've finished watching your YouTube tutorial, or once you've finished on that page of your textbook, or reading an article online, once you've looked at your notes again, this is where you're going to write in a few sentences what you've gained, what you've learned. And the more you articulate and the more you think about your summary, the greater the chances of retaining and holding on to that information. So I'm going to show you an example that I worked through on a press conference yesterday. I watched the Radio New Zealand press conference on the 5th of May and watched Dr. Ashley Bloomfield and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern talking about the COVID-19 update. There was a lot of information, a huge amount. So if I was going to try and just remember things, I know that in a few minutes I would have forgotten some of the details or possibly have got things wrong, and inaccurate information is no help to anyone. So what I've done over here is, as I was watching the press conference, I was jotting down keywords that really stood out to me that seemed to be particularly important. But you can see that my notes here are really messy. Now, I don't expect you to be able to read these, but I can read and understand them. So I was able to capture some accurate data that I would have otherwise probably got wrong a few minutes or a few hours or a few days afterwards, relying on just my memory. I also captured 2 quotations, one from Dr. Bloomfield and one from Prime Minister Ardern. But I wasn't able to keep up and copy things out word for word. That's okay. So I know that this word actually says very encouraging. Now, I've written enough of that word to be able to move on quickly and keep up with the information. I did the same thing down here when I was listening to Prime Minister Ardern. She said New Zealanders have demonstrated a level of commitment, I know it looks weird, but that says commitment, and discipline to our goal of winning the fight against COVID-19. So I've actually been able to capture 2 quotations. I thought about the notes that I got through the conference, revised my keywords, made sure that I had the most important people listed. And then I thought about it for a little bit, and there's a couple of questions that I want to ask, and that requires me to do a little bit more research and look things up, because this conference on the 5th of May didn't answer these 2 questions for me. Afterwards, what I did was I then wrote a detailed summary using some of the keywords that I had already identified, so that I now have a concise summary of the information. Now, this is going to prove really, really useful and important for me to refer back to. So this is something that I encourage you guys to start adapting your note-taking skills. Okay, I'm going to switch back from my visualizer. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to just switch back to the active panel and show you a different strategy and a different way that you can make notes if you don't like the look of Cornell. So you've got to find your own style, you've got to find your own approach. For some people, maybe Cornell is just too much writing. So this will look familiar. Everybody knows how to mind map. But I've been a teacher for quite a while now, and I know that students' workbooks are often filled with half-finished mind maps. So my suggestion to you instead is to start a mind map at the beginning of every topic that you study. Okay, so this page will be almost like your directory. It'll be something that you refer back to and add detail and information to as you gain information. So, this is a really nice colourful way to approach your note-taking. You can think about the kinds of categories and subcategories that you might need. And again, I'll just quickly show you another one that I've worked through. So here I'm just using the idea that maybe this is a film study for English for NCEA, just imagining that I'm using the film The Hunger Games from a few years back. This is the kind of mind map that will appear at the front of my folder or my workbook on this topic. So this is not all of the information on this topic, but it's serving as my directory, which means as we study settings, I can add details onto these sections, and then also I can make a note that there is more info in folder. Okay, so particularly if I want to focus in on a particular setting, a theme, quotes, characters and so on, I'll know that they're actually going to appear later in my workbook, but this is my directory. It's a really great, really simple system to keep track of all the important parts of a topic, and this works for any subject. Okay, so mind maps are a really effective tool for us to use for note-taking, but they've got to be useful and they've got to work for you. So I like colour-coding things, I like putting things into subcategories, but I've also got to make sure that I'm actually writing about those things in more detail. So when I'm making notes, as you could see, often I'm not using complete sentences, I'm not even writing all the words down. I'm using arrows to connect things together, and there are so many really simple ways to abbreviate and make your note-taking even quicker. So here are some of the things that I've gathered. Use them and it will help you to capture information and not panic about having to copy every single word down. That's what a lot of students feel like they need to do. Okay, so putting all of this together didn't take me very long, actually. I just did some Google searching and I looked around on the internet for ways to make notes that suit me. You're different and different strategies might work for you, but here are some suggestions of things that you could look up and some links to some really great tools that you might want to think about using. Remember, with note-taking, they're only useful if you actually apply and use the information in them. So I wish you luck, and thanks very much for watching.